Today we're making a tofu banh mi, and I got a lot of requests for this one when I asked folks which sandwich I should make from the Taste Atlas list of best sandwiches in the world, and this recipe is inspired by this video by Andrea Nguyen over at Munchies. She goes into the history of the sandwich as well, so check that video out too. Now for our tofu, I'm just simply slicing up some super firm tofu as I do, and you can use whatever you like. Those soy curls, mushrooms, seitan, anything will work great. I'm also doing a version with some thicker slices of tofu that I'm going to be grilling up and frying as well. And to make that, I'm just going to do the thing where I carve up the tofu into fillets, and I'm going to use the scraps in another dish, of course. And you don't have to do this, it's mostly for aesthetics. You can also just use the entire block, totally up to you. Lastly, I'm going to score them like so, and now that our tofu is sliced up, the next thing we need to do is make our marinade. To start, we're going to add in 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce, and then next we're going to do 1.5 tablespoons of hoisin sauce. Optional but recommended is half a teaspoon of Maggi seasoning, but then we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of miso paste, 1 teaspoon garlic powder, a teaspoon smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon sesame oil, a teaspoon lime juice, 2 teaspoons ketchup, and then lastly 3 tablespoons of vegan mayo or neutral oil. Whisk that up and give it a taste, and I added 2 teaspoons of agave to sweeten it just a little bit more. Then all we need to do is pour that over our tofu and make sure you toss it a bit to incorporate the marinade, and the thinly sliced tofu is going to get broken up, and that's okay. In fact, it's preferred in my opinion. And then we just want to let this marinate for an hour or up to overnight. So while our tofu marinates, we can prep everything else, and first up, let's do the mushroom pate. And this stuff is great just on a cracker, but even better on our banh mi. First, we're going to get 1 pound of mushrooms. I'm using baby bella, but you can use shiitake, portobello, or even standard button mushrooms, or a combination. We just need to roughly chop them up and try to keep the pieces the same size, but we're going to be blending them up in a food processor later, so they don't need to be perfect. We're going to do the same with 2 shallots as well. Then next, to a dry and cold pan, we're going to add our mushrooms and then turn on the heat to medium. You may need to do this in 2 pans as I did so you don't crowd it and steam the mushrooms, but we just want to cook these down until they release all their water, which can take about 10 to 15 minutes. And once you no longer see any mushroom water in the pan, add a little oil and then the shallots. We'll cook those down until they've softened about another 6 to 8 minutes, and then we're going to add in 4 to 5 cloves of garlic that we've minced, stir that around and cook it for a minute or so, and then add in 1 cup of veggie or mushroom broth, and then we're also going to add in a tablespoon of soy sauce and 1 teaspoon of miso paste. Stir that around, and optional is adding in something like kitchen bouquet or gravy master. And honestly, I did this for color and I was a little overzealous with it, so I'm not even sure it's necessary. Either way, you just want to cook down and reduce all that liquid, which will take another 10 minutes or so. And once it's looking something like that, we're going to add it all to a food processor along with a 1/4 cup of vegan butter. Then we need to blitz that until it's a pate, and that is literally it. Like I said, it was a bit too dark, so I made another batch with less kitchen bouquet, but I kind of wish I would have just left it out entirely. And this is going to make a good amount of pate, so you should have enough for plenty of sandwiches or just snacking on with crackers like I've been doing. Now for the pickled veggies, we're going to get 2 carrots and a daikon radish. You really only need 2 cups each of these, or about 300 grams of the radish. We want to cut them into matchsticks, and you can do this a number of ways. You can use a mandolin, you could do it with a knife, you can julienne them, whatever you prefer will work. Once we have them all sliced up, we're going to do a quick brine in some salt, about 1 teaspoon worth. Toss them in that and then add in a teaspoon of sugar as well. And this is going to draw out some of the moisture, especially in the radish. Let that hang out for about 20 minutes. I'm putting it in a strainer so the liquid drips out. And after 20 minutes, they should be pretty soft but still crunchy. You should be able to bend them like so, and as long as they don't snap in half, they are done. You can rinse them if you like, but they tasted so good as is, I just pat them dry instead. Next, I'm going to get a 1/4 cup of sugar and then add 3/4 cup of white vinegar and 1 cup of water. Whisk that to dissolve the sugar, and I know a lot of the time people boil this, but in Andrea's video, she doesn't do that, so I thought I'd follow her lead, and it totally works, so no need to boil it. Then add in the carrot and radish to a jar and cover in the brine, and honestly, these are so good at this point, but they get even better after a few hours, and you can just keep these in the fridge to use as you see fit for up to a month. The other veggies in this sandwich are some fresh jalapenos, cucumbers, and cilantro. And for the jalapenos, I'm just slicing them like so. You can also use pickled jalapenos, which I've tried with the leftovers, and that works well too. For the cilantro, just chop or pick off some of the leaves as you see fit. And the cucumber you can slice into coins, but I like slicing them into matchsticks too. I just discard the super watery and seedy cores, but once those veggies are prepped, we can cook our tofu. So for the tofu that I sliced thin and then broke up into smaller pieces, we just need to grill that over medium heat. And full disclosure, I did use some of the leftover marinade from the other tofu for this, but that's not necessary. I was also a little overzealous with the kitchen bouquet with this, but I really wanted some color contrast on the sandwich because I'm a huge nerd. But all we need to do is cook this tofu until most of the marinade has reduced down, and while I did dig this version, I think the next one was my favorite. We're going to grill those tofu fillets that we marinated until golden brown, about 3 to 4 minutes per side over medium heat. Then we'll dredge them in some flour and cornstarch. I used about 2 tablespoons of each for 1 pack of tofu. And we're going to dredge them until they are nice and coated. And we're going to heat up some neutral flavored oil in a skillet to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit and give them a dunk. And I probably used too much oil for this. I'm basically deep frying them. But what I wanted to do was shallow fry them. You know what? It's okay. It's going to work out. And this is just going to give the tofu a nice outer skin, for lack of a better word, but once they are golden brown, we can then slice them up into shapes that are perfect for our bread. Speaking of which, the bread should be a nice soft French roll. If it's made fresh, the outer crust will be nice and crackly, but the ones I have aren't super fresh, so, they're a little bit softer. But if you want to make your own, Mary's Test Kitchen has a recipe. If you're like me and don't feel like baking, just get yourself a nice French roll from the store or a local bakery. I'm going to cut mine so it has a hinge, and then out of habit, I'm going to hollow it out a little bit. Next, we'll smear on some of that mushroom pate, and then we're going to pile on our tofu on top, jalapenos, cucumber, the pickled veggies, and cilantro. Optionally, maybe some sriracha mayo or just sriracha if you like. Wrap it up if you prefer, and we can dig in, and I can see why this is the #1 sandwich in the world. Everything works in perfect harmony and balance. The savory pate and tofu, the fresh veggies, the heat of the jalapenos, and the bite of the pickled veggies. And because of the format of the sandwich, you get a perfect bite every time. So I really do hope you all make this, and if you want to see how to make a chopped cheese, check out this video right here, and until then, I'll see you all next time.